The midnight fog clung to the river like a shroud, curling around the rusted iron bridge that had stood for decades. Somewhere beneath the water, a secret had waited, silent and patient. K9, a muscular German shepherd with eyes too knowing for his age, lifted his head and let out a low, haunting howl that echoed across the empty banks. It was a sound that pulled at the edges of fear and memory. No one had walked this stretch of water after dark for years. But tonight, something long buried demanded to be found. The town of Ravens Hollow slept uneasily beneath a sky so black it seemed to swallow the stars. Even the crickets, usually deafening in their chorus, fell silent as the river moved like a living shadow beneath the old iron bridge. Its beams were slick with rain from a storm that had passed hours ago, leaving the air heavy with the scent of wet earth and decaying leaves. Jacob Whitman pulled his coat tighter around his shoulders, shivering despite the thick fabric. He had been walking this lonely riverside path for years, but tonight it felt different, like the landscape itself was holding its breath. His hand brushed the leather grip of the flashlight at his hip, but the beam barely penetrated the fog, and the familiar hum of the town was nowhere to be heard. Behind him, K9 padded silently, ears pricked, tail low but tense. The German shepherd was no ordinary dog. His eyes tracked shadows with an almost human comprehension, and tonight, every hair along his spine was rigid with unease. "Easy, boy," Jacob murmured, but K9's growl rumbled like distant thunder. It was low, controlled, a warning. Jacob froze. From somewhere under the bridge came the faintest scrape, metallic against the river's murmur. K9 stiffened, his hackles raised. "You hear that?" Jacob whispered. The wind carried the echo of the sound again, a dragging, deliberate pull. It was not the river. It was something else, something that did not belong. The bridge loomed above them, rusted beams creaking as if warning them away. Jacob's pulse quickened. He knew the stories. The tales of man who had disappeared decades ago, swallowed by the river. Everyone in town had moved on, except for the memory that clung stubbornly like moss to the riverbanks. K9's howl shattered the silence. It wasn't just a bark or a warning. It was primal, a call that resonated with the deep, unspoken dread lodged in Jacob's chest. The sound cut across the night like a knife, and for a moment, Jacob swore he saw a shadow detach itself from the undergrowth, slipping toward the water. "Stay close," he said, trying to steady his shaking voice. K9 whined but obeyed, circling back to his side. The dog's nose twitched, nostrils flaring, and then he bolted, skidding across the damp soil toward the river's edge. Jacob cursed under his breath, sprinting after him, feet sliding on the mud. At the riverbank, K9 stopped, tail stiff, eyes locked on something submerged just beneath the dark surface. The water was deceptively still, reflecting the dim glow of Jacob's flashlight in distorted ripples. And then, just as he was about to call K9 back, a hand, pale, emaciated, slapped the water surface. Jacob stumbled back, heart hammering against his ribs. The dog barked furiously, circling the spot as if trying to dig into the river itself. The hand disappeared again, leaving only a faint swirl of sediment. Jacob's breath came in ragged gasps. Memories of the old disappearances surfaced, the unsolved vanishings, the rumors of hidden crimes that the town had quietly buried. And now here, at this forgotten stretch of river, the past was clawing its way back. Jacob knelt at the bank, eyes scanning for any sign of life. The water was cold, and a strange metallic smell hung faintly, sharp against the earthy dampness. Something about it triggered a memory, a whisper of his childhood. A day when his father had told him, "Some things belong under bridges. Let them stay there." K9 growled again, low and guttural, and suddenly Jacob realized the dog was not just sensing the immediate danger. K9 was following a scent older than tonight, older than anyone alive in the town. A scent that had been waiting, hidden under layers of mud, rust, and silence. "I don't know what you found, buddy," Jacob murmured, his voice almost lost in the mist. "But if it's what I think it is, we're in over our heads." The river, usually a passive witness to the town's quiet decay, seemed to pulse under the bridge. Jacob's flashlight caught on something shiny, something unnatural, submerged just beneath the water's murky surface. He squinted, leaning closer. There, tangled among driftwood and reeds, was a shape, rectangular, solid, deliberately placed. K9 pawed at it insistently, splashing water over Jacob's boots. He knew better than to ignore the dog's instincts. With shaking hands, Jacob reached into the icy water, gripping the object. It was heavier than he expected, and as he lifted it, the river's current tugged at his arms like it was trying to claim him too. The object's surface, a rusted metal box, corroded but sealed, the edges gnawed by years of water. Jacob's fingers trembled as he set it on the bank, brushing mud from a latch. K9's eyes never left the box, alert, waiting. "What the hell?" Jacob whispered, fear and curiosity warring in his chest. He had grown up in Raven's Hollow, heard every rumor, every whispered story. But nothing had prepared him for this. The river had kept it secret, and now it had chosen to speak. For a moment, Jacob allowed himself to imagine the contents. Papers? Bones? Evidence of something no one had dared uncover? The night air pressing around him, heavy and expectant. The howl of K9 cut through the silence again, and this time it sounded almost human, as if the dog was mourning or warning. Jacob lifted the box onto a nearby rock. The latch was stiff, resisting, but a hard tug sent it snapping open. Inside were objects wrapped in layers of oilcloth, photographs yellow with age, a bundle of letters tied with string, and something heavier, solid, that clinked ominously against the metal. He pulled out a photograph first. It was old, worn, corners curled, depicting a group of men standing proudly near the very bridge where he now stood. One of them looked eerily familiar, a man whose disappearance had haunted local headlines for decades. The sight of the familiar face made Jacob's stomach twist. The past, it seemed, was not done with Raven's Hollow. K9 whined, nosing at the next bundle. Letters, brittle with age, ink faded but legible. Jacob unfolded one carefully, eyes scanning the jagged handwriting. The words were chillingly mundane, detailing meetings, debts, arguments, and then abruptly, a threat. Someone had known something terrible, and they had taken steps to bury it, literally, under the bridge. Jacob's hands shook as he flipped through the remaining items. The final object, heavy and cold, was a small metal key, tarnished, its purpose a mystery. He felt a twinge of dread, a sense that unlocking the secret would change everything. K9 sat back, ears pricked, eyes reflecting the dim flashlight like molten gold, a sentinel in the fog. A noise behind them, branches snapping, something moving through the undergrowth, made Jacob whirl. Shadows shifted in the mist, and for the first time, he felt the unmistakable weight of being watched. He wasn't alone. Never had been. Jacob took a deep breath, heart still hammering. He looked down at K9, who gave a low, steady growl as if to say, "We have to finish this. But be ready." And at that moment, Jacob realized that the river had revealed its first secret. But it was only the beginning. Something or someone was waiting for him to follow the trail. And the town of Raven's Hollow, with all its quiet facades, was about to confront the truth it had buried for years. Jacob carried the rusted box back to his truck, mud squelching beneath his boots and the fog pressing down like a living thing. K9 walked beside him, silent but alert, ears swiveling at every distant splash or creak from a river. The town of Raven's Hollow still slept, unaware that its past had started clawing its way into the present. Back at the edge of his driveway, Jacob placed the box on the tailgate, wiping the damp off with his coat. The metal key gleamed faintly under the streetlight's dim glow. He paused, feeling the weight of it in his hand. Something about it hummed with danger, a quiet insistence that demanded action. "You know, buddy," he murmured to K9, scratching behind the dog's ears. "We're in deeper than I thought. This isn't just about missing men or old rumors." K9 whined softly, shifting his gaze toward the river as if to say, "You haven't seen anything yet." Jacob's thoughts drifted to the photograph he had found. The smiling faces of men whose secrets had festered for decades. One man, Harold Trent, had disappeared shortly after the photo was taken. Rumor had it he owed money, crossed someone he shouldn't have, or worse, knew something that someone wanted buried. Jacob shivered, realizing the box was more than a relic. It was evidence. Evidence someone might kill to protect. He began sifting through the letters, each one a fragment of history with sharp edges. Arguments about debts, veiled threats, confessions written in frantic scrawl. One letter stood out. It referenced a meeting at the bridge, a night exactly 25 years ago, and the phrase, "If it goes wrong, we bear it where no one will ever look." The phrase made Jacob's stomach knot. The river, the bridge, the box, everything fit together now, like pieces of a grim puzzle. A car engine rumbled somewhere behind him. Jacob froze. The fog muffled sounds, but the hum of an approaching vehicle was unmistakable. K9 growled low, a warning that cut through the mist. Jacob ducked behind the truck as headlights pierced the darkness. The vehicle stopped a few yards away, and a figure stepped out, a man in his late 40s, with a rugged face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. He moved deliberately, scanning the area. Jacob recognized him instantly. Sheriff Collier. Jacob swallowed hard, heart-hammering. The sheriff wasn't supposed to be here. He had long been a figure of authority and intimidation in Raven's Hollow, but his presence tonight felt ominous, personal. Collier's eyes landed on the truck, narrowed as he took in the box. "You shouldn't be here," Collier said, voice low but firm, the kind that could command a room without raising it. "That river keeps its secrets for a reason." "I found something," Jacob replied cautiously, trying to gauge the man's reaction. "Something that's been buried for decades. You got to see this." Collier's expression hardened. "Some things are better left alone. Trust me, people got hurt because of curiosity like yours." Jacob's pulse spiked. People still could get hurt if this stays hidden. A tense silence stretched between them, broken only by K9's low growl. Collier's eyes flicked to the dog. "You've got good one there," he said, his tone almost admiring, though guarded. "But even the best dogs can't dig up everything without consequences." Jacob's jaw tightened. He wanted to press further, but he sensed a history in Collier's warning. Whatever the sheriff knew, it was tied to the river, the bridge, and the past sins of Raven's Hollow. "Tomorrow," Collier said finally, "come to my office. We talk there. Don't try anything tonight." Jacob nodded, watching him retreat into the fog. Once the car's engine faded, he exhaled, tension draining slowly from his shoulders. K9 nudged the box, pawing at it insistently. The dog's intuition screamed that the night's revelations were only beginning. The next morning, Jacob arrived at Sheriff Collier's office. The interior smelled of old coffee and dust, a clutter of files and photographs scattered across a worn desk. Collier gestured to a chair, and Jacob sat, placing the rusted box between them. Collier's eyes scanned the contents, pausing on the photograph of the men near the bridge. His face darkened, a flicker of anger and regret crossing features hardened by decades of authority. "Where did you find this?" he asked. "Under the bridge," Jacob replied. "K9 led me straight to it." Collier's hands trembled slightly as he lifted the key and letters. "You don't understand," he muttered. "That bridge, it's not just about old disappearances. That river swallowed more than men. It swallowed lives, reputations, truths someone went to great lengths to hide." Jacob leaned forward. "Who?" Collier hesitated, a shadow passing over his face. "Some names you won't want to hear. People still alive. People still dangerous. You've opened a door, Jacob. Once you step through, there's no going back." The conversation was interrupted by a faint buzzing. Jacob's phone lit up, an anonymous message with no number, just 2 words. "Stop digging." K9 growled low, ears pinned back. Jacob felt a chill creep along his spine. Whoever had sent the message knew he had the box, knew he was close to uncovering something that could unravel Raven's Hollow completely. Later that afternoon, Jacob returned to the river alone, the letters and photographs now in a backpack, the metal key burning a hole in his pocket. The fog had lifted, replaced by an uneasy overcast that draped the bridge in gray shadows. K9 bounded ahead, nose to the ground, tracking something unseen. Jacob knelt at the water's edge, examining the riverbed. Something glinted beneath the surface, another clue, perhaps, or a trap. His fingers brushed against the mud, silt seeping between his fingers. A sudden movement beneath the water startled him, and he jumped back, heart racing. K9 barked furiously, circling the spot. Then he saw it, A submerged crate, large in the first, bound with thick ropes. Someone had tried to hide it, but erosion and the river's pull had exposed just enough for a curious eye. Jacob's stomach churned with the realization that the box he had found was only the beginning. The first crate had secrets. This one, he sensed, held consequences. As he pried the ropes, a voice behind him cut through the mist. "You really shouldn't be here." Jacob froze. A man emerged from the fog, a tall, wiry figure, face partially obscured by shadows. His eyes glinted with a mixture of calculation and malice. This wasn't Collier, and the air between them crackled with tension. "Kieran?" Jacob asked, disbelief in his voice. The man had been his childhood friend, someone he trusted implicitly, until years of silence, distance, and a secret shared too late had eroded their bond. "I see you found the first part," Kieran said, stepping closer. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." Jacob's chest tightened. Kieran's expression was calm, but the menace in his voice made every instinct in Jacob scream. He realized that betrayal wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was quiet, waiting in the fog to strike at the perfect moment. K9 growled, bristling between the two men. The river seemed to hush, holding its breath, as if anticipating the collision of past and present, trust and deception, life and death. Kieran's gaze flicked to the crate, then back to Jacob. "One wrong move," he warned, "and this town will swallow you whole, just like it did before." Jacob clenched his fists, heart hammering. He couldn't turn back now. The river had revealed its first secret, and K9 had led him into a darkness that demanded answers. But even as he prepared to pry open the crate, he knew the real danger wasn't the river. It was the people who had learned to manipulate its secrets for their own ends. And somewhere beneath the bridge, the river whispered a promise. Everything hidden would come to light, whether they were ready or not. The night had fallen again over Raven's Hollow, heavier this time, as though the sky itself mourned what had been unearthed. The fog rolled off the river in thick, suffocating waves, curling around the bridge like ghostly fingers. Jacob crouched beside the second crate. K9 tensed at his side, ears twitching at every whisper of movement in the underbrush. The metal key burned against his palm, a tangible reminder that the past could unlock both truth and danger. Kieran loomed nearby, his figure half hidden in the mist. His expression was unreadable, but Jacob sensed the weight of secrets pressing down on him. Every instinct screamed that this was a moment everything would either unravel or destroy them all. "You think you understand what's in these boxes," Kieran said, voice low, calculated. "You don't. You never did." Jacob's jaw tightened. "Then tell me, before someone else dies over it." Kieran's lips pressed into a thin line. For a moment, the old bond they had shared flickered behind his guarded eyes. But just as quickly it was gone, replaced by something colder, more protective of the shadows they'd lived in for decades. "It's not just about evidence, Jacob," Kieran said. "It's about power, about people in this town who would kill to keep their sins buried. And you just made yourself a target." The wind picked up, tugging at their clothes, rustling the leaves. K9 growled low, stepping forward as if sensing the first ripple of danger. Jacob reached for the crate, its rope still tight, the wood slick with river silt. He pulled. The crate gave way with a groan, water spilling across the bank. Inside were layers of documents, photographs, and, most disturbing, bones. Human bones, carefully wrapped and stacked. Jacob's stomach twisted. The letters and photographs he had seen were just a prelude. This was the proof. The missing pieces of Raven's Hollow. The people whose vanishings had haunted the town for decades. Kieran's gaze didn't waver. "This," he said, voice almost reverent, "is why we buried it. Because once it came out, nothing would be the same. You don't know the people involved, who's still alive, and what lengths they'll go to." Jacob felt a chill creep through him. Every face in the photograph, the men standing by the bridge decades ago, now seemed like shadows of monsters lurking still. He realized Collier's warnings weren't just about the past. They were about survival. A splash behind him made Jacob spin. Collier stepped from the fog, gun in hand, eyes hard and wary. "Step away from the crate," he ordered, voice tight. "Don't touch anything else." Jacob froze. "Collier, why now?" The sheriff's jaw tightened. Because someone's been watching us. Someone in this town doesn't want the truth to come out. And if you touch those bones, if anyone finds out, his words trailed heavy with implied danger. Kieran stepped forward, placing himself between Jacob and Collier. He doesn't understand, Kieran said. They burned the town down to keep this hidden. Jacob looked between the two men, understanding finally dawning. Collier wasn't protecting the town because he loved it. He was protecting it, or himself, from those who would destroy it to stay safe. Kieran, despite his warning tone, had been trying to make sure Jacob survived long enough to uncover the truth. But even he was morally gray, walking the line between protection and guilt. K9 whined sharply, nosing at Jacob's knee, grounding him in the chaos. Jacob took a deep breath. Then we document it, he said. Photographs, letters, everything. The town deserves to know. Even if it's messy, even if it hurts. Collier shook his head. You think the world works that way here? Some secrets were buried for a reason. And now it's going to get ugly. The tension snapped like a live wire. A figure emerged from the mist on the opposite bank. One of the men from the old photograph. Older now, his eyes as cold as a river. Jacob realized too late that someone had been following them all along. A shot rang out. Chaos erupted. K9 barked and lunged, teeth flashing. Collier and Kieran scrambled, dragging Jacob behind a crate for cover. The world narrowed to sounds. The river's rushing, the crack of gunfire, K9's growls, the scream of the wind. Jacob felt his heart hammering, adrenaline and fear fuse into a singular purpose. Survive, protect the evidence, and uncover the full truth. In the firefight that followed, alliances fractured. Kieran revealed a hidden pistol, defending Jacob and Collier alike, and Jacob realized that even in betrayal there were layers. People he had trusted, people who had lied to him, were not purely villains. They were surviving in a town poisoned by its own sins. When the shooting ended, the mist settled back over the river, leaving Jacob shaking, drenched in sweat and river water. Bodies, or the shadows of them, lay motionless in the fog. K9, panting, nudged Jacob's leg, grounding him in the aftermath. Jacob opened the second crate fully, documenting everything with his phone, careful not to touch more than necessary. Every photograph, every bone fragment, every yellowed letter told a story of greed, jealousy, and cold-blooded murder that had been hidden for decades. Collier finally exhaled, lowering his gun. You've done what I couldn't, he admitted, voice rough. The truth will come out one way or another, but don't expect applause. This town, it doesn't forgive easily. Kieran disappeared into the fog without a word, leaving Jacob and Collier alone by the river. K9 barked once, a sound of triumph or warning. It was impossible to tell. Jacob knelt by the riverbank, staring at the water. The river had swallowed secrets, but now it had returned them. He realized that revelation was not the end. It was a beginning. The town would reckon with its past, but he also knew that some wounds never fully healed. Some trust, once broken, could never be restored. And yet, there was a quiet power in that knowledge. The truth, raw and unflinching, had weight, and Jacob understood that carrying it was both a burden and a release. He looked down at K9, who rested his head on Jacob's knee, eyes reflecting the dim light like molten gold. We did it, buddy, Jacob whispered. We survived the night. But this is just the start. The fog shifted, curling around the bridge, hiding and revealing the river in equal measure. Somewhere beneath its dark surface, the river murmured, as though acknowledging the truth finally brought to light. The past had been unearthed, secrets exposed, and the town of Raven's Hollow would never be the same. Jacob breathed deeply, feeling the weight of both sorrow and resolve. The bridge, the river, and K9's midnight howl would forever echo in his memory, a haunting reminder of what had been lost and what had been found. And in that quiet, trembling moment, he understood the fragile nature of trust, the endurance of courage, and the permanence of memory. Some things, once hidden, demanded to be remembered, and some truths, no matter how painful, were worth facing. The river flowed on, relentless and patient, carried with the echoes of lives long gone, but also, perhaps, a chance at redemption.